And welcome one and all to the Trinity Force LCS Rundown, episode number 45. I am not Tom Montganorum. I am Optimist Tom Searfoss, going to be hosting episode 45 of the LCS Rundown for you guys, as we are going to be looking over the NA LCS today. Mott cannot join us because he's too busy actually watching Hand Egg, which is a different kind of sport, rather than esports.
Again. They scored again. He doesn't need to be watching anymore. It's a 24-point game. This is horrible.
Well, I'm just assuming he's too intoxicated to actually podcast at this point, because that is the point of other sports. However, we already heard Mr. Mitch Cereal Box Turner rejoining the podcast today.
And I'm pretty sure getting super wasted is kind of in the job description for this, so I don't know why that would... I mean, that seems like it would work out perfectly, but...
That's also true, but we also have back this week, broadcasting live from his new place on the West Coast, Mr. Greg Credible Mushroom Russo.
What's up, everybody? It's good to be back.
All right, guys. Now, if you missed out on last week's episode, well, you suck. That's pretty much the only way I can phrase that one. We went over the EU LCS last week, and as I just said, we're going to be going over the NA LCS this week. Of course, if you missed us, it's because you probably don't know that we go live at this time every single Sunday or Tuesday, depending on what happens over the weekend, here on stream.trinityforcepodcast.com. You can also check us out. I know I've been doing this a lot during the week, like when I'm basically at home or on the train commuting in and out of work. You guys can find us on Reddit, because we have our own subreddit now for the Trinity Force Podcast Network, conveniently at r/T-Force Network. A lot of discussion on a lot of stuff the proper talks about, like, you know, balance changes, the actual patches, and things are going to be coming up in different kinds of stuff. However, we also have a lot of LCS discussion that goes down over there, such as big discussion about OGN that was over there this past week. You also can shout us out on Twitter. It's at LCS Rundown, and we have a phone number that I'm not going to give out this week because Mott's not here to work it, which also means we don't have any of those really cool sounds he usually uses, which is we don't have any Poppy Watch, which makes this episode the best one so far.
Oh yeah, I think this is easily the most hyped just because we don't have those sounds, even though we've only been here for, 2 episodes now? Maybe 3? And also, we have been getting a bunch of emails recently, and I think we're going to go over those probably in the near future. I think Mott finally logged on and said, oh crap, we have just a wealth of episodes. One of them being, hey, Cereal Box, get your damn pop filter set up. So that's happened today.
Lo and behold.
Appreciate the feedback.
Already answering your emails months and months late. However, we are going to be getting back into that one. Like we said, when Mott's back, we'll wind up taking a couple more emails. But let's move on to some League of Legends content, starting with some news from around the League of Legends scene. First off, we got to start with the fact that since we're talking about North America, we need to also mention who is going to be involved in North America week number 1, and that does not include Zion Spartan or Skara, because Zion Spartan was fined and is not starting in week 1, and Skara is not going to be in for the first 3 weeks for CLG. Already getting off to a great start for the fans.
I mean, are they going to run out of money? I think at this point, at this rate, CLG is going to run out of money just from fines, because I'm sure that there's more and more stuff they're going to find. This seems kind of like, you know, when colleges will have investigations for minor or major infractions. I feel like CLG is going to be the spearheading all of the fines and getting them all set up so that Ryan knows, all right, I guess we know how to find everyone because CLG is now broke and completely out of competitive play now. But I think they'll be all right. I mean, I don't know. Do we know who their coach is going to be? Zixlal? I'm not sure. I'm familiar with them.
That's their team analyst. And then starting for Zion in week number 1 is actually an old face. Thought he was retired, but Benny, aka Psycho Sid from the XDG Vulcan days, is going to be starting top lane in week 1.
Wow, that's massive throwback. I mean, people being retired is never really that permanent, as we've seen from, I don't know, all of the subs for CLG.
Well, this does mean that there are now 3 members of CLG Black on that roster, at least for week number 1. Or, no, only 2. Sorry. There's the Vulcan synergy between Benny and Xmithy, and then there's the CLG Black synergy between Benny and Link, way back from then. But
wasn't Afremu on there too?
I don't believe so. I think he was on MTWNA way back in the day. He's playing AD carry.
Yeah, that's right.
I remember those days.
Fond memory.
He's really come into his own on support, though, to be honest.
Yeah, it's pretty interesting to see like the whole transformation that he went through there. One of the
support Tarek video.
Oh God, I remember his support.
There were some early signs.
I remember his support Leona video, the first one that came out.
Support is so easy.
You just step up.
Presence in the lane.
You're there.
Shit on him.
We just really don't want Afrobu to go anywhere. But other news across the league, very, very hyped up at the fact that Alex Ich is now in North America, or at least is going to be playing in North America this split. He's a sub for Team 8, and he's the starting mid laner for the Challenger Series team Brawl. They were the formerly ranked 5s team We Love Shakira, which actually way predates back to like Frank Fang Gaming and that team and all the changes they've gone through. But they got sponsored by Brawl, which is apparently a Brazilian esports organization, breaking into the NA Challenger scene. That's going to be pretty interesting. It's been a tumultuous ride for Alex Ich himself.
Yeah, he's been kind of all over the place, hasn't made...
Yeah.
I recognize Shorter Ace from, was he on Final 5, I believe? I was looking at Brawl's lineup right now. I guess he moved just recently. I guess that was, I can't even see when that happened. It doesn't look like it's on the
Final
timeline.
5 had, after the tournament, they had made like a giant post about how they were going to be moving forward in the Challenger scene. And one of those things was they dropped Shorter Ace, and I believe they dropped their support, who was, no, not their support, their AD carry. They dropped Prototype and they dropped Shorter Ace, and everybody was like, what the fuck are you doing, Final 5?
Yeah, you came so close, and then you're going to just completely just uproot everything you'd made. So I guess it seems Brawl's going to be benefiting from that, picking up Shorter Ace. I believe they've already qualified for Challenger Series, correct?
I don't know if the ladder lock actually happened, but they've been floating around top 10 of the ladder, and the top 20 or whatever wind up actually breaking down and qualifying for play-ins, or top 16 or something like that. I don't exactly remember the rules off the top of my head.
Week. It looks like it starts this week, so... Wait, thanks, Leaguepedia, for clicking Challenger Series and it goes to LCS. That's helpful.
No, LCS starts this week. This is why we're all so hyped up.
Oh my god.
All you have to do is click Challenger and you get to LCS. I think that's getting ahead of yourself.
Well, it depends. If you're the 10th place team, then it's that easy.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
Oh, yeah, true. I love that. I love that so much.
I didn't have a chance to comment on that, but I think that's fantastic.
Why don't you guys, since we did last episode, we did a little bit of a joint rules breakdown and EU LCS breakdown. So myself, Makanorum, and Sifa wound up going over the format of the LCS last podcast. So since you guys weren't there, why don't we start with you, Greg? What do you think about the whole changes to the format? There's the point system, the auto relegation for the 10th team, putting the Challenger team into the first place Challenger team from Challenger Series into the actual LCS. The 9th and 8th place teams have to fight it out in the relegation tournament, if you guys don't know, or the promotion tournament, if you guys haven't been following along with that at home. The middle of the pack kind of stays, and then eventually the top 3 point scorers, pending one of them not winning the summer split of the LCS, get to go to Worlds. If you win the LCS summer split, you automatically go to Worlds. Otherwise, there's like a Korea gauntlet style bracket that the top 5 point getters have to fight through.
I didn't quite follow that. So there's a way that the... Hold on.
There's a lot of new
It's
stuff.
ridiculous. No, there's a lot of stuff.
All right. So the winner of the summer split automatically goes. The winner of the spring split gets extra points, correct?
They get the top number of points. The reasoning behind the winner of the summer split automatically qualifying for Worlds is if one team stomps both splits, they get to auto-qualify. If one team comes from the Challenger Series and proves they're the best team in NA, they shouldn't have to fight through the entire bracket or get screwed on points that way.
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Generally speaking, I like it. I like that there's a significant advantage for winning the spring split now. I wish it was almost like spring split auto qualifies unless it's the same team twice, just to make it that much more important. But I get it. I definitely like the auto relegation. I think it's going to be exciting. The only thing that I wasn't really feeling is the mid-season tournament that they announced.
They did announce the mid-season invitational. Basically,
it's a cool concept, right? You get the winners of each of the splits from around the world to play a tournament. But I don't feel like there's any consequences for winning or losing. It's almost just like a pure exhibition match, which... meh.
I feel like it's going to make like an IPL 5, which, I mean, everyone's just always going to come back and jerk off over. But I feel like it's going to make another one of those in the middle of the year. That's fantastic. You've got great teams coming from, I believe, around the world, right? Yeah, we got the winners of every single split.
Although
is it just the 5?
It's-
or I guess 6.
No, what happens is, so this is very interesting because if you guys haven't been keeping up to date on your scorecard, there's the NALCS, the EU LCS, China and Korea, and then there was the GPL as the major regions. The GPL has since fractured into 2 different leagues. Southeast Asia, which is all the places that are not Taiwan, Hong Kong, and Macau, are in the GPL. The LMS, the League of Legends Masters Series or something like that, is all the Taiwanese, Hong Kong, and Macau teams. That includes your TPA, your Hong Kong Esports, which is the old TPA roster with Toys and Stanley. It includes AHQ, who went to Worlds this past year. That tournament, the LMS, is considered one of the top regions. The GPL, which is all of Southeast Asia, is now considered a wild card region and competes with the winners of Oceania, Brazil, Latin America, the CIS, and Japan for a spot Turkey for a spot at the Mid-Season Invitational. So 7 wildcard teams, 6 spots at the Mid-Season Invitational.
I like it. I was a gigantic fan when I saw that get announced, and I mean, I love that the LCS is finally moving towards point systems, kind of getting that gauntlet. Korea, what are the LCK now? I don't like that. I don't like names changing middle of the.
We just call it OGN.
It's OGN, but I really like that the spring split means a lot, and that you can make it through even with sneaking through in 3rd place in the summer after maybe even not being in the LCS in the spring, and then if you go all the way through that gauntlet and make it into the 3rd, is it the 3rd seed?
Yeah,
yes. Okay. It's the top points summer split winner, and then there's a gauntlet for 3rd place, just like kind of what we've been used to from OGN. So I was really excited that they were going to do that, and then I really like obviously the relegation style format that kind of feels a lot like the English Premier League and a lot of other leagues in Europe for football, where you automatically have relegation or promotion depending on how well you do. So I'm a fan. Love all these changes. Didn't get to talk about it last week. That's pretty much my 2 cents.
So the Mid-Season Invitational is really, really cool, too, for me, because this is basically All-Stars minus the shenanigans part. And while the shenanigans part was really, really cool, it kind of took away from, some of, the fact that it was hey, here's, an international tournament with a lot of cool stuff thrown in for you guys to watch. And I think at this point, I mean, you're not going to wind up auto-qualifying for Worlds or something like that if you win the Mid-Season Invitational. Obviously, there's a huge monetary benefit. There's the fact that you wind up taking home, a mini Worlds title for your own region. I don't know. I think it's just going to be a really, really cool display of skill. And a lot of people have been calling for more international tournaments. In the most cases, international tournaments didn't have a big significance behind them to begin with besides money, like IPL 5. And that's still hailed as one of the more popular, one of the all-time greatest international League of Legends tournament, so why the heck not the MSI at the same exact time? I think it'll be fine.
And we're not losing the All-Star game, which I know is kind of janky, fun
we didn't really
things.
talk about that, but I like that they're moving the All-Star game to the off-season. I think that's fantastic.
Yeah, we've had months off with nothing. I mean, it's not like we're going to be covering every single important part of the All-Star game when it's probably just everyone dicking around in the Pro Bowl, but it's not. It's really nice to have that in the dark times that we've just been experiencing for so long.
I mean, a lot of people hate on the Pro Bowl because it is kind of shitty. But in most other All-Star games, there is something to be said for just the magic of seeing the superstar players from every team, in this weird sort of mismatch where they're just going at each other and competing for pride.
I'd like to see something be on the line. I know that very few professional sports have the All-Star game count for something besides MLB, where it counts for home series advantage in the World Series, or home field advantage, home series advantage. What? I would like to see something minuscule. I know, didn't we have it 2 years ago that they got an extra spot at Worlds? The winner?
Yes, but that was
All-Star?
when they were doing each All-Star team was from each region, which is actually a lot like format-wise the mid-season thing that they're doing. Except there's obviously the teams are staying the same, but it's still going to be a representative team from each region facing off. So I think if you were going to have that kind of prize, it'd probably make more sense to have that in the as the stakes for the mid-season invitational.
Yeah. Okay. I'd agree with you there.
I would have to say that I'm interested to see what they do with the All-Star game at the end of the year. The coolest thing is if it's like the Fire and Ice that we saw last year, this gives us an entire year to be educated on every region to try to vote in the best player rather than the most popular player. Or maybe the best player becomes the most popular player. Like, nobody voted in Uzi I, or Uzi, whatever you want to call him, off during, the Fire and Ice tournament. But he wound up being one of the most popular and most talked about players at Worlds for 2 years running. So now you have like that Worlds thing fresh in your mind. And then we go from Worlds, we see like the number one team winning, League of Legends for the year, going on to the All-Star game where we get to see those top players from every team who may or may not have made it to Worlds get to compete. I think it's going to be awesome. Nobody exactly knows the format of that one. They just said it's going to be more of an All-Star game type thing with, like we saw this past year. Hey, they could wind up looping in things from Season 3's All-Star game, which was also a lot of fun because then you get to see who's the best region with their quote-unquote best players and all the hype surrounding that. But there's still a lot of time before we want to get into the end of the year for that one, so there's a lot of time for them to decide what exactly that entails.
Fingers crossed for Earth mode.
Oh, man,
If they don't, I'd be surprised. But we should get on to the LCS. We're already 25 minutes into the preview.
Well,
What's there?
now for the part that everybody actually tuned in for. Let's start talking about the NALCS. There are 10 teams moving into the NALCS this split, and in case you've been living under a rock, that includes Cloud9. We, of course, have CLG, Team Gravity, which is former Curse Academy, Team 8 qualified to the promotion tournament. Coast is back with a different roster this time. Dignitas and their new players. Team Liquid, aka former Curse Gaming. TSM, everybody's fan favorite. We also have Winter Fox is going to be involved in there. And am I don't have everybody on this list? Or is that everybody already?
Did you get Liquid and Impulse?
We have, Team Impulse, thank you very much, which is the former LMQ roster.
Mm-hmm. Well, not really.
What is
was
left?
The organization. The organization, maybe, not the
it's
roster.
Wei Zhao, Zhao Wei Zhao, and the Wei Zhaos is what they're going to be now known as now. But we got
the All-Star game is they're going to have karaoke with groups like that.
All right.
Zhao Wei Zhao and the Zhaos with their hit song Long Way Zhao.
Oh my gosh.
Why don't we start off then with
We're glad to have you back, Greg.
Oh, it's good to be here.
Why don't we start off then with everybody's favorite cute Chinese mid laner of Zhao Wei Zhao and the rest of Team Impulse. For you guys that don't know, Team Impulse, former LMQ, went under a lot of roster changes because, well, basically their entire team went back to China. So Zhao Wei Zhao is the only returning member of the team. He's in the mid lane, but they have some pretty hyped up picks in the top and jungle. Impact, former SKT1K top laner, world championship winner, is on this team, as is Rush9, now it looks like he's just known as Rush, in the jungle. He is one of the top solo queue players in Korea. He is a jungle main, and he will be playing that for Team Impulse. And we also have the bottom lane, which honestly seems like the most lackluster part of what should be a very exciting roster to watch. They have WizFusion, who has now renamed himself to his name, Apollo, and Adrian Ma, formerly known as Catarific Rules, the support player for RMU University Collegiate League of Legends team. So he joined that program, and then like a couple weeks later, pulled out of the program to play in the LCS.
I was really confused for a second when I opened up the roster and WizFusion's name didn't have a link anymore because they obviously just didn't update it yet on the LCS page. I'm like, well, that's a good sign. Everyone just forgot about last split 2 splits ago when he was playing for Coast.
Yeah.
But now Apollo, I like that name better. I don't know if I have high hopes quite yet for Team Impulse because like the Impact and Rush picks, I still think there's good. I always talk about communication as being really important, hence why I supported Giants super hard and will ride that team too. Just I'm picking them to win everything ever. But I don't know how Chinese, Korean, and English are going to mesh with this team. They could be really good potentials there, but
always
bot lane needs
potential. Help. But I think we are seeing a consistent pattern now when these international players come in that don't have good English language skills. their natural talent just can't overcome that loss of communication and synergy. At least not enough to get past, into the world spot. I mean, unless they are very fluent and the organization takes the time to really integrate them, it just causes issues.
Yeah, we'll see. I who do they start against? They start with a game against Liquid, former Curse, and against my bad, and against Dignitas, who's been gutted. So I don't know. I could kind of see them having it's not the most difficult week one. They could have a good introduction to the LCS, but I wouldn't put them any higher on my predictions than like 6th, 5th. I don't know.
The
out of
biggest
relegation, but
Yeah, the biggest question for me is with such huge acquisition in the top lane, like top and jungle, these players really need to pay off because you could have wound up going with what like a lot of the other NALCS or EULCS teams have gone for, especially in the past, CLG, go for somebody that is a better than average North American top laner because there's a lack of talent in that pool, and then round out your roster with like a very powerful carry role like an AD carry looking at Team Liquid, and try to build your roster around those two kind of roles. You have like somebody solid, somebody who can carry, and then like the best mid lane talent you could get at home, and then build your roster around that. They've gone for something completely different where they already have Xiao Zhao, so it's kind of like they're starting with a leg up, but then they went for like somebody who can impact every single lane in Rush 9, and then Impact to, while he's known as a solid, consistent top laner from Korea, I mean, he lost his job to Marin. To be completely honest, he lost it to a carry top laner because that was not his playstyle.
Yeah. I was just looking at something. Korean players now outnumber Canadians in the NALCS. That's kind of scary to me. They have 11 Koreans now in the NALCS. More than one per team.
Are we StarCraft yet? Let me know when we get to StarCraft level.
Are we the NBA yet?
Those Koreans are pretty good. Pretty good at the basketballs.
I mean it in the sense of like international stars come to the NBA because their local leagues are not local, but their national leagues are shit, and NBA is where all the money is.
Yeah.
Wow. Talking about
Nowitzki, case in point.
Talking about all-star players and national pride, why don't we take a look at Cloud9? Of course, their entire roster is exactly the same as it's always been. Balls in the top lane. We have Meteos in the jungle, High in mid lane, Sneaky Elimination rounding out the bottom lane. Now, the big question for Cloud9 is, are we expecting them to just rinse and repeat performance from North America? I mean, technically, they had their worst split as an LCS team last split when they took second place in the playoffs. Woo. And then they wound up going into Worlds where they wound up losing out in the quarterfinals. They wound up getting out of their group stage, beating Najin Shield. They wound up losing in the quarterfinals, a little bit disappointing from them. But, I mean, it's more than what we expected looking at them in NA last split. So what are we, like, are we just expecting the same thing from Cloud9?
I will go and I will be so bold as to say Cloud9 is my prediction to win the entire thing. Possibly both splits. Possibly
bold predictions.
Splits,
bold predictions here.
I will say this: Cloud9 will at least clinch a world spot. I don't think either of you would disagree with that. I think they will absolutely win one out of the two splits, and I say they have a better than even chance of winning both of them.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you. It's not really that much going out on a line to share that mentality. They now only play 2 games. They only played twice against each other team, correct?
Yes.
So we're not having the games total because we have 2 new teams. You're down to what? It's going to be
I believe it's
18 games.
I believe it's 90 total games. I believe it's 18 games in total that
Per
each team plays, down from the 112.
Yeah. So I wonder if that's going to affect. Cloud9 obviously did really well their first split. They went the 25-3. They obviously could show that they can do really well in the best of 1 formats. I think that's not going to affect them as much as some other teams that might have not so good best of 1 performances that might marginalize out over the course of a split. So I think they'll be fine. There's nothing changing for them. They should just, I don't want to say stomp through, but they came really close not to even getting the first seed in the summer split last season when it just turned into a clusterfuck at the top and they pulled out the put the 1 seed at the last week. They started against TSM, which I'm great. TSM C9 is the first game of the split for, I don't know, 2 or 3 seasons running now, just because they're the finals game from the previous split replayed at the beginning. Not surprised. They also get Gravity, former Curse Academy. If they don't start 2-0, I'll be surprised considering how well they played at IEM San Jose. And yeah, Cloud9 all the way. That should never change.
I don't know. I'm a little bit hesitant. Like, I kind of feel like Cloud9. I mean, they've been doing a lot of stuff like streaming and showing that, like, obviously first place at IEM San Jose. They beat out Elements. They trounced the hype train that was the Unicorns of Love. Unfortunately for Greg, but they. But the thing is, like,
you know what, Tom? If it had to happen, that would be the team I'd have.
That or a team
somebody has to ride the horse eventually.
That or a team helmed by Crepo. Either way, I think you would have been excited about that. But Sneaky and Lemon, they've been showing that they're still very, very powerful bottom lane duo. Actually, one of the first bottom lane duos in America, or the North American side of things, that were actually playing a lot of Callista in the bottom lane and trying to break that champion. And that's where you can blame the Runon's Hurricane Callista builds you see in solo queue now. Thanks a lot, Sneaky and Lemon. They still just seem to have like the chemistry down pat. So until another team really comes in and tries to shake absolutely everything up, I mean, like, this is one of the teams with all North American players left on their roster, and they're the one that seems to have the most cohesion. So it's going to probably take another team full of North American players like CLG transition to try to stand up to them. What do we feel about CLG? Because they're starting off basically with a broken leg at the beginning of this split.
They're limping in, that's for sure. And also, that's not really full America. Like, Smithy's not from America. He's Filipino.
He's from North America. He's just a Filipino descent.
Yeah, but like,
are you going by esports? Are you going for esportspedia or Leaguepedia?
We're not gonna.
Haha, there we go. But the team is Zion Spartan in the top lane. He's being replaced by Benny for week 1 because we already went over the beginning of the show. He has been fined and suspended for 1 week due to the whole poaching fiasco. We also have Ixsmithy in the jungle, former Vulcan XDG jungler, or referred to as Double Lift at Season 3 Worlds as Dandy Light. Link returns to the mid lane, much to the arguing of Reddit for a whole 12 hours before he was forgotten about again. And then Rush Hour returns to the bottom lane, Double Lift and Aphromoo. What do we expect from CLG? Because we didn't see a lot of it at IEM Cologne.
CLG is so frustrating because on paper it looks like they'd be fantastic. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Double Lift, but there's no disputing that he and Aphromoo as a tandem are one of the best bottom lanes, possibly in professional League of Legends, period. I mean, they are excellent. Ixsmithy, he is a really good jungler. He is. Zion Spartan, one of the best North American top laners, if not the best. Or he should be. And Link, I mean, okay, everybody has to have a Jezus. But
oh. Poor Jezus.
Yeah.
Can't even get a break talking about CLG.
He's actually playing better. I almost feel bad about picking on him. He has improved, but anyway. So it's like, for what I'm together, and it's, if they were on the same page, they would probably be top 3, and they may yet be top 3, but I'm going to doubt it.
So I feel like one of the CLG's weakest links has always been everybody on the team wants the ball. Like, the biggest thing for me is when looking at CLG, you have your bottom lane, Aphromoo and Double Lift. They can carry a game. In this circumstance, you have Zion Spartan in the top lane. He can split push and carry a game. But the biggest kind of question mark to CLG's strategy is the glue that holds those lanes together. Now, a lot of times you might be like lane swapping a top laner into a situation where he hits a deficit in farm, and then all your eggs are really in on the Double Lift Aphromoo basket. And that's where a lot of the flack has been given to Link in the mid lane. He shows flashes of good play, and then kind of retreats to being more of a supportive, protect the Double Lift kind of mid laner, goes back to his Orianna, doesn't really play a lot of roaming and playmaking champions. And then last split we had Dexter. who, while he did play a lot of these initiating or very supportive, like Elise has a stun and can help out in like a gank situation kind of junglers, the synergy between him and Link in mid lane wasn't there, and that doesn't necessarily do a lot to like help out for an AD carry in this circumstance. You used to like peel for a team fight. So they have a lot of these pieces like Zion Spartan and Double Lift. They both want the ball. They both want to carry the game. They could do it on opposite sides of the map. But while that action is happening, the mid lane and the whole jungle area where most of the action in the game is going on has nothing whatsoever. So do we think that Xmithie and Link, this is a new synergy? I mean, Xmithie and Link haven't played on the same team before. Is this going to be the kind of glue that helps put CLG back together? We didn't see Xmithie at Cologne either, unfortunately. He didn't get his visa worked out in time, so it was ThinkGuard that was taking his place.
So it's reasonable to expect that their IEM performance will probably not be representative. I mean, if you don't have your regular jungler, it's a pretty huge loss.
Yeah. Also, Greg, question for you. How you said Link, every team has to have a Jesus. What are you going to think of in week 4 when they get to play each other? Is that going to be? Is this something's got to give?
I can't wait to see
the mid lane matchup.
I would be fascinated to see who comes out on that. I honestly, believe it or not, having watched Jez's and Challenger, I think you might actually beat Link.
I can't wait till we have Orianna versus Xerath Farm Fest for 20 minutes in the mid lane. But CLG, I mean, for me personally, it's really difficult for me to place them because we have a lot of new teams importing talent. We have a lot of question marks in cohesion. I mean, CLG has their own question mark, but they've gotten a chance to benefit from the fact they don't have to wait on people's visas to start practicing together. So for all we know, they could be scrimming against Cloud9 and TSM and et cetera right now. They do have a decent support staff, even though Scar unfortunately won't be able to be in the booth coaching them for the first 3 weeks of LCS, which big change to LCS. Coaches can be in the booth for picks bans now. They're going to be a more relevant factor in the team, at least on the actual days they play. But Scar is not going to be available. Zion Spartan's not going to be available. But by the end of the split, I mean, it's really difficult for me to place CLG outside of the top 4 still. I still think they have some fight in them. I just really think they need to be this is the split. Every single CLG fan says it. They have potential. They could do it. But this is the split that they actually need to show up. If they do not show up with this specific roster, I mean, I don't know how much longer that bottom lane is going to stick around.
Well, you're saying a lot of talent getting imported, obviously. I think they're one of the maybe 3 teams that has all players that have played in the NALCS before. So they're not going to be that they'll be one of the teams I think most accustomed just in terms of their players and where they've been. I'm not saying that they're going to be the synergy will be there. We don't really know about Xmithie and Zion. Zion we got a glimpse of via Cologne, but I think they'll be all right. Top 4 is I'd put them in the 3 to 6 range. I don't think that they're going to be world beaters, but I always live like CLG and would like to see them do well, but I don't see them overtaking, top 2 spots.
Well, let's shift our gears and talk about a team that was coming in from the top side of the Challenger circuit. Let's go with former Team Curse Academy, now known as Team Gravity Gaming. I guess they can't decide they want to be Team Gravity or Gravity Gaming yet, so they put all 3 together in the same thing. So
I love their emblem. I love their emblem so much. It looks so retro and 8-bit. And
it looks like it was made by our Space Sticks.
It looks like an emblem from Halo 2 when you were in your teens and freaking out when you're like, oh, I'm gonna make the coolest looking emblem with all these colors and changing everything. That's what it reminds me of. So nice little throwback for me. I don't know. Is that Gravity's?
It looks like a Space Stick.
I mean, hey, no one. Everyone who's listening, Optimus Tom is not suggesting that you go to our Space Sticks.
I am not, because you'll find a bunch of Gravity logos.
We don't accept responsibility for what happens to you, nor accept the bills for the psychiatric ward afterwards.
So speaking of excitement, the thing that I'm most excited.
All right, and that's Gravity Gaming. Next up,
I am most excited about seeing Cop come back. I know everybody puts a lot of hate on Cop, but he's always been one of my favorite ADCs. I don't know. He's not the flashiest. I like a lot of ADCs as well, but Cop has always impressed me because he would get saddled with support, after a worse support, and then an okay support, then a much worse support, then an okay support, then a good support, but only for like 2 months. I think he went through 6, 7, maybe even 8 supports over the course of as many months.
He even had St. Vicious as a support at one point.
Damn it.
And he's still good. Like, he's the most consistent, like, independent AD carry, I think, just around. I mean, all the other AD carries are great, but Cop he's good in that you can drop him in any situation with any partner. You could probably pair him up with somebody in solo queue, and he'd still look fantastic.
See, that's a very strong point for Gravity, and I think it's going to help them out, especially when it comes to, the week-by-week format of the LCS. The biggest question for me is on this roster, you have Hauntzer in the top lane, St. Vicious in the jungle, Keen in the mid lane, Cop and Bunny Fufu as your bottom lane. You have consistently well-performing players, but, I mean, when it comes down to it, like, the biggest playmaker on their team is their support. Like, everybody can talk about Keen all they want, and he has his Hecarim mid lane, there's hype behind that, but when push comes to shove, he becomes like a solo split pushing mid laner in the late stages of the game. The person making those plays and making things happen across the rest of the map where the team is actually fighting, it's been Bunny Fufu. I mean, St. Vicious might be making calls, but Bunny's Thresh, Bunny's Morgana, Bunny, anything with a skill shot is the thing that really sets up the team for them. So when your most impactful player, at least from a spectator standpoint, has been your support player, is that enough to contest against the rest of these top teams in North America?
I mean, why can't it be? If you have somebody who's going to be initiating, it's not like he obviously has to do all the damage in the world, but if he's going to make those really good initiates with strong, engaging supports like a Leona, like a Thresh, I don't know why not. If you've got the follow up and good,
I mean, it's one of those situations where it almost depends on the other team. If they respect Fufu's range and his skill shot ability, and don't give him those opportunities, then they're not going to have anywhere to go. But if they keep getting hooked by his Thresh, then it sort of sets up a really easy play for Gravity to make. It's kind of like the Go command in solo queue. You land the Thresh hook, you land the Morgana bind, and at that point, it's not rocket science. Just go kill the guy, and then win the team fight.
Are there going to be lots of spaceship and rocket jokes for Gravity this whole time? Really?
And we have liftoff.
Jesus, stop.
So one of the glaring things.
Well, I mean, we could do it all day because gravity goes to time.
Don't do it.
So let's get off. Let's get off the pun train for Let's get off the pun train for just 1 second, as much as it pains me to do so. But let's talk about top lane talent for Gravity. We have Hauntzer. Now, Hauntzer, for a little while, was known, in my mind, as the young buck of North America, because in solo queue, he was still only Diamond 2, while the rest of his teammates are in Master and Challenger tier. But he's been able to persevere himself back since then, and now he's actually at 700-something points in Challenger, so good for you, Hauntzer. However, he's been this player that's been around the scene for a while, at least floating around the Challenger scene for a very long time. Floated around with most of Curse's other Academy teams. He was on Curse Academy, then he went to LoL Pro, then he went back to Curse Academy, and he's made it into the LCS. But the biggest thing is he's consistent. He could play top lane meta picks, but now the meta picks are these more carry-oriented champions. The Rumble, the Lissandra, things like that are being played in top lane. How is Hauntzer going to perform against people like Dyrus and Balls, and now we have Impact in the top lane, like these top tier world's caliber top laners?
I don't know. I don't know that that NA is really the. I'm gonna regret saying this, but like world class top laners is not really where I think of NA LCS. Like,
I don't think so either.
Yeah,
they've been importing them from everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, but then you don't even have that great of ones now. Like Impact was really good. I don't know if he's going to be great now. Like has he really been playing that much?
He played in the OGN preseason with SKT. He and Marin swapped time, and then he wound up, I believe, not getting the starter role or did not want to split time and went over to just the tip.
Of course. But otherwise, there's no real, I don't think of the top lane as being a scary place in the LCS. So I think he'll be fine. I actually kind of like Gravity a little bit, as much as it pains me to say, and I'm sure Mott's going to unfollow me on Twitter or something for saying a St. Vicious team is going to do well. but I think that I think they'll do better than everyone's predicting. They think that they're going to stay pretty low because they're the challenger team coming in on very end.
Whatever you might think about their chances for success or any story arcs they have, you got to admit that it's going to be pretty to look at.
Let's move on to...
I'm trying to like face push via my camera just to, I don't know, I want to punch Greg via my camera.
As far as their top laner, they could always borrow one from the Chinese. Oh!
I mean, everybody else has been borrowing top laners from all around the world. Although one team that does have a fairly homegrown top laner for themselves is another challenger team making it into the LCS. This time through the promotion tournament, it is Team 8. They got Cali Trolls, the team captain and shot caller, in the top lane. Porpoise Pops may just be known as Porpoise now, which really upsets me, in the jungle. Slushy in the mid lane, even though they have Alex as a sub, he's not starting as far as I know. Maple Street and Dodo in the bottom lane. Team 8. Mott's note here is, will we all laugh when they ironically come in 8th place?
Yes, we will.
I mean, I would.
Question
I don't
asked and answered.
I like them. I really like Team 8. I like Cali Trolls. What did he use? He used Kha'Zix a while back in one really, really high profile tournament, I believe.
Lone Star Clash.
Yeah,
Lone Star Clash.
I wonder who was casting that. I feel like it was somebody on this podcast.
I don't know, Greg.
Yeah. But I really like him. I think Team 8 is going to be a lot of fun. Maple Street, I believe, is the only returning NALCS player who was on Velocity previously. Of course, it's Odd One's brother.
That bodes well.
I mean, yeah, Velocity was great. They got bought out eventually by, wasn't that LMQ? LMQ took their spot. It was EG, my bad. So I think they'll be pretty good. The Alex Sitch pickup is really high profile, but it's not like he's been in the LCS for a while now. I'd be surprised if he even there haven't been that many subs who come in unless you're CLG because you keep getting everyone suspended. I don't think Alex Sitch will make really an impact here. Team 8, I see them like top 5.
Really?
I like top 5. I like top 5 for Team 8.
I mean, I'd be curious to know, Mitch, what do you think of like not starting Alex Sitch? Because to me, that seems like a very strange call.
I don't think so at all.
I don't think he's been that good. He hasn't been able to get himself back into the LCS for, 3 tries now? With a number of different teams. He's been bouncing around. I think that Team 8 was one of those synergy teams I really like, kind of like Giants, that played really well together and have been together for, I think, a little while, a good while. And
at least a year, over a year at this point.
Yeah, and so I like that they're sticking with kind of the Cloud9 recipe. And obviously the only other team that has a number in their name. But I think that they'll do pretty well. And bringing in somebody like Alex Sitch wouldn't be bad. He's a great shot caller, pretty much, I think, really, really well known for his shot calling and leadership. But if that's not what they need, then just having him as a sub is nice. But I don't see them really popping him into the starting lineup.
You did mention that Team 8's more of a synergistic team than rather somebody that has a lot of flashy players. They're a bit of an opposite story of what we were talking about at Gravity before, where Gravity, my main concern was how is Haunter going to perform in the LCS against all these top laners while the rest of the team is able to wind up working together as a cohesive unit. In this fact, it's the complete opposite. Cali Trolls was basically one of the best top laners in North America Challenger, possibly in North America in its entirety, and he's been stated. I mean, I don't know if you guys have watched the hype video they have out for the LCS right now, but he was saying, I have a year off from medical school to play in the LCS. At the very least, I want to be an innovator. I want to make an impact in top lane and say that happened because of me. He's the shot caller for the team. There's a lot of pressure on him in that top lane because he's the standout player. You know, I guess kind of like, Mitch, you've already said that you expect them to be like a top 5 team because of this, but I guess in general, I was going to say, how does this kind of reflect upon the NA philosophy? We said just previously, NA top laners normally not very, very flashy. This is the team that's completely opposite. Their top laners really, really flashy. Everybody else is kind of meh.
Maybe it breaks the mold. Maybe they've got an advantage up in top. They might. We haven't seen him play against LCS caliber teams yet. Maybe he's the one who just breaks the meta up in top lane, or at least in the NA, and kind of sets a new gold standard for NA top laners. And I'd really like to see that happen. obviously I love seeing change, as noted with everything happening to the format of the LCS. That's why I think they're going to do pretty well. So, you guys don't think they're going to be that high?
I think it's going to be hard to say. I'm very interested to see it. You don't often see top lane shot callers, so no other reason than that, it'll be really interesting to watch them play. But the other competition that they have in the LCS is pretty harsh, so I think doing better than 5 is probably a tall order for them.
Well, they've got a interesting week 1 because we're going to get to see if they're actually ready for the gauntlet. They've got TSM and CLG as their first 2 opponents in the opposite order, but yeah, you're going against two of the most established NA teams to start out your LCS career. We're going to know a lot more on the podcast next weekend.
That's very, very true. I personally expect to see them kind of flutter in the middle of the pack. If Team A gets 6th place, I think that would be very impressive for me. And 6th place necessarily isn't a bad thing. It's still technically the bottom half of the LCS because now there's 10 teams instead of 8, but you wind up staying in the LCS. You don't have to fight through promotions. You don't have to worry about anything else. It's just you're saving up circuit points for the next split. So,
and you're in the playoffs. Well, no, you're in the playoffs.
Yeah, you're in the playoffs at that point, but I don't know. I'm not expecting them to do all too much better than that. I got a lot of hype and love for a lot of my challenger players and a lot of challenger teams, but I mean, like, I kind of expect them to go hand in hand by gravity, like one above the other at this point. Mm. So speaking of other challenger teams, let's go for the last team that has come through the challenger circuit. This one, of course, winning out through the expansion tournament as well. It is Team Coast, not the same Coast that would eventually wind up, disbanding and becoming multiple different teams. Not the old, GGU Team Dynamic roster. God, this is
that's so long ago. Oh my gosh, was that the original spring split?
It was the original spring split. They were GGU.
Second place in that too.
Actually, I saw a tweet that you had put out about a little bit unrelated about the Seahawks and Green Bay game being saying like this next game's not going to live up to the hype of that past game. And Days from the T-Force proper actually chimed in and said that nobody should be rewarded for that terrible amount of play. They should never be able to win a game. And I originally had a tweet typed out that was way too nerdy for a football conversation, so I decided not to go with it. But it was TSM versus GGU Spring Season 3 Finals begs to differ with you because that was a roller coaster ride there. GGU wound up taking TSM to a 0-kill game, like it was like 16-0, and then wound up losing in dramatic fashion the next game. But regardless, that is all in our past here, and that's just me living in the glory days of Season 2 and Season 3 when things were a simpler time. But now we're back to circuit points, so it's better. Anyway, Coast is Chris in the top lane. Impaler, probably the best jungler in North America now in the jungle. Jesus, unsurprisingly in the mid lane. And Mash and Sheep rounding out the bottom lane. So
I think you vastly overestimate Impaler.
I really do. But that kind of preys upon a point I was going to make. I want you two guys to talk about Coast as a whole, because in general, they do not impress me. And as much as I love Impaler, I highly expect them to be the last place team in the NALCS.
I don't know about last place, but they'll definitely be in relegations. They're going to have some competition for last place, possibly Gig.
I'm really happy that last place now is just gone, like so that will happen. I don't know, Impaler. I wouldn't, like Greg said, I wouldn't call him the best in the NA. I still think Meteos and Dominate would have something to say about that. I like Dominate despite toxicity, but neither here nor there. Coast,
toxic free since Season 3.
Bet he has that on a bumper sticker. That would be great. That'd be a great like Coast, or I guess Team Liquid bumper sticker. I don't know. I'm not sold on Coast. I mean, I know I've been talking a good bit of praise on the Challenger Series teams to make it in, but yeah, I'm not on board. I don't like Jez's that much. He screwed me in fantasy last season, and so I can't really support them too much.
Overwarned.
So when it comes to Coast, Impaler's a strong suit. Like saying he's one of the best junglers in NA, obviously a huge overstatement, but he's definitely
He's like the 4th best.
He's probably the best Rengar in North America. I'd give him that.
I mean,
Yeah,
okay.
But what's that worth?
And apparently a trip to the LCS at this point, because that's how they
Apparently
beat
a
Fusion.
van. Apparently a ban.
Jesus, big question marks for him. In North American Challenger, he looked pretty good. But that's North American Challenger, which is like a step below EU LCS, which, if you look at mid lane talent, is actually above the NALCS in at least previous terms of mid lane talent in general. But he's extremely passive. He's a wave clear mid laner. He doesn't really roam all too much. And when he does play a character that has mobility, it's Ahri. And we've already seen that there's going to be some DFG changes, like it's not going to exist anymore. So those kinds of champions might not be as impactful. Do you think Jesus is going to shine in NA as an EU mid laner, or is he just going to try to skirt by on the fact that he's paired with another powerful jungler? No?
I'm not.
You're just shaking your head.
I'm just like, I'm not. I can't say good things here, just because
I will
he
say
burned me
this
once.
about Jesus. He's gotten a lot better, but it's still not going to be enough to carry games against some of these harder teams. Or some of these middle-level teams.
Who is going to be able to carry for Coast? I mean, let's talk about Mash and Sheep. Like, the duty falls to Mash, because Chris, we've seen him play in top lane. He has his shining moments, but in general, if he's another Velocity player, coming back as well as Maple Street, I'm not necessarily impressed with his play. And then Mash and Sheep, they're like Reddit's love child, and I think they're completely overhyped. Like, I hate to say it. I think Mash is a solid AD carry, but I don't like Sheep's support style.
You're 100% right, Tom. They're extremely overhyped.
I think there's going to be. You're asking who's going to carry. I don't think anyone will, and unless it's somebody who just surprises us out of nowhere with an improved level of play, or just something innovative, I don't see Coast winning a lot of games, and I can totally agree with you on that 10th place finish coming out from Coast, because there's no shine, there's no. I don't even know polish. There's nothing good to say. I can't say anything good about this team. But that said, they're probably just going to crush the LCS and win the whole thing now because I've said that.
I will say that Dig and Winter Fox do have fair chances at placing below them.
Well,
It's a risk.
We'll get to that in a moment, but now that we've pretty much all agreed on how we feel about
and that's who
Coast,
they play this week. That's who they play this week, too. Oh, my gosh. They start with the easiest schedule ever.
So we have some feelings about Coast. Hopefully they'll show up and prove us wrong in that one. But let's skip on to, like you said, one of their opponents for this week, and somebody that like we were going from one dull note and wanted to go to a shining note, but this team continuously shits on anything shiny. Let's go and talk about Team Dignitas, who had a very underwhelming performance at IEM Cologne. First off, they dropped the game to Ace, which was a bunch of random Turkish players. They lost to Gambit, which we went over last podcast. You guys weren't there, but Gambit was the best worst team at IEM Cologne is the way we summarized that one. Their roster, I mean, they've imported 2 Koreans. Gamsu apparently was a understudy top laner in Korea. They have Crumbs still in the jungle, steady, tried and true, and peters off into the end of the season, Crumbs. We have Shifter, the guy who apparently can 1v5 a team, but only on like days that don't end in Y in the mid lane. And then Core JJ, who was a flashy AD carry that seemed to really like suiciding in the bottom lane, and Kiwi Kid, who's a flashy support player who really likes suiciding across the map. I mean, Dignitas, there's so much hope for this team. Granted, they didn't have a lot of time to practice before IEM Cologne, but I mean, it just looks like it might be another disappointing season for them.
Did they go to the thrift store, the thrift store to pick up like players? Like where? There's no like big name here that they've been picking up. I think that they're losing people to getting poached by either CLG or by streaming. Considering Cutie just left he's gonna make shit tons of money via streaming. And then they pick up 2 underwhelming Korean players when there have been big names picked up. Piglet was moved over here. Impact was moved over here. And you got Gamsu and Core? Again, this is just like Coast. Like, we're going to have a string of teams that I can't say good things about because I don't expect them to be in the LCS next split.
I feel the worst for Crumbs out of all of them. He is really good. And I don't know... Like, it feels like Dig was a team of relatively good players. And then there's Crumbs. And all of a sudden, all the other good players are jumping ship, and he's still there as it slowly sinks.
Well, apparently the Prophet didn't foresee the future of his team.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that I really have to say about the Dignitas roster is, I mean, they've kind of become a new CLG. They have potential. They have these players that are supposed to be really good. They acquired Shifter and had Skara head to the coaching position last split because Shifter was supposedly this big big carry coming out of the mid lane role. I'm mixing two roles together in this case, but he always he either peters between two things. He's either a Bjergsen and he spikes it in and winds up winning a team fight for his team. They move on to win the game from that. Or he's a Jesus and he just looks too scared to act upon those things. I mean, now you have the fact that, I don't know, like Core in the bottom lane seemed to kind of be a little out of sync with Kiwi and the rest of the team Dignitas. Gamsu in the top lane actually looked decent because he had good teleport timing. I don't know if it's the fact that he speaks very good English, or he just has really good game sense as to when to use that teleport. But like, every single player on this team seems to need help from somebody else, but they don't seem to be capable of giving each other that help.
That's when the best thing he can say is that he's got good teleport timing. That concerns me for a team.
Well, the big factor of it is you have these top lane champions. You could play a Gnar, you could play a Maokai, you could play even like a Rumble in certain circumstances. Your teleport timing into a fight is going to be really, really crucial, because let's say you're going for a dragon, you teleport into that fight a half second too late to drop your equalizer in a good spot. All of a sudden the fight's completely turned around in the opposite direction. There's some gleaming moments at IEM Cologne where he's able to teleport into a fight and helped turn it around, whereas the other top laner wasn't as impactful in that circumstance. So teleport's a big factor in top lane.
I don't want to undersell how important it is, but then when that's like your key selling point.
Oh, well, okay.
Yeah. I know that can completely turn around anything. But I mean, you're not like he's really good at dueling like a Zion Spartan, or he can carry games late. It's like, oh man, his teleport's on point.
Well, when you put it that way, it does not seem nearly as impressive.
And then who do they get? They get Impulse. So, okay, Dignitas and Coast just playing the dredges of the LCS this week, as they are both I don't know. Well, I think Impulse is up next for us. I don't know how we feel about them.
Well, we talked about Impulse already, but
sorry, I'm looking at the list right now.
Oh, okay.
But that's just, I don't know. Those games are the ones I'm not going to care about too much. We're talking about Coast and Diggs games. Yeah, well, I don't want to watch those except to see if I could possibly play in those games and be as effective.
Well,
wow, the balls.
No, that's a bit.
That just sunk in. That just sunk in.
And I'll shit talk on Jesses all day, but I wouldn't go that far.
All right. So since things are getting a little bit out of hand, let's go for a fluid transition into Team Liquid over here.
Oh.
Team Liquid, I'm hyped up about, because when I first got started in esports and watching games, I was a huge StarCraft Brood War fan, and now that Team Liquid has taken the stick out of their ass and actually gotten into League of Legends, I'm super hyped up to see them perform. They have a team that has consistently been top 4 by picking up...
For team. No, not top 4. They've been 4.
They've been top 4. Emphasis on the 4 for a while. They picked up Curse Gaming's old roster, which now includes Quas in the top lane, Dominate in the jungle, Phoenix, formerly known as Miso, who came from the same team, I believe, as Core, so not high hopes for that in the mid lane, and then Piglet, SK Telecom, T1K World Champion in the bot lane with Xpecial, but most importantly, they've brought back Nightjackie as a sub for the mid lane. I'm hyped for Team Liquid.
Oh man, I am so hyped for the Pork Special. That is going to be the best lane ever.
So I'm really glad you brought that up, because a big thing in this is, first off, we don't know anything about Phoenix. Is he going to be a safer play and wind up being like a Jesus and not be a playmaker that they lost in having Voyboy? You could say Voyboy a little over aggressive. He died a lot in mid lane. Maybe his deaths led to some of Curse's defeats by giving up key objectives, but by not playing safe, he made Curse do things. I mean, if Voyboy wasn't doing things, Curse got into 90-something minute games with Complexity, which everybody fell asleep at least twice during. But if he's more aggressive, is the question, can Dominate live up to his playstyle? Is he going to have big faker games where he gets super aggressive and wins the game? Or is he going to have more faker games like recently where he gets super aggressive and blind picks his Aerith and then gets shot on by Zed?
So Phoenix is really the question mark here more than anything. I think Dominate will be consistent in not like superstar status, not like a Meteos, but he'll probably be relatively consistent for them, relatively good. Pork Special Lane will dominate if I Will Dominate does not. We've got Quas, who last split really stepped up and has become one of the top laners. To be reckoned with. He was completely dominating up there. So it's really, I think he's the question. Is this Phoenix guy going to be able to hold? Because if he can actually win the lane, then I think you basically have all three of their lanes winning consistently game to game. And that would be, that's pretty difficult to deal with. I think they may place top 3.
I really was hoping.
2.
I was really hoping you'd go with all that praise lumped on them and be like, so 4th place. Just completely.
It's possible 4th place, but I can't imagine Piglet and X Special together being placed at 4th.
So
unless their communication is like completely off, which from what I've heard is not the case.
Well, here's the big question mark then. This is what I originally wanted to get to, but we had a lot of other points to hit before with Phoenix obviously being the big question mark. So Piglet, when he was on SK Telecom, he was one of 2 major threats. He had Faker and then sometimes Impact in the top lane to kind of make things happen. So first off, he's going to be a huge focus for ganks and early dives because you want to keep Piglet down and out of the game, especially if he's still playing late game hyper carries like, his signature Vayne. But he did wind up having a stream or a vlog or something. I believe it was within like the first 2 months of him coming over. He had said, well, in Korean, it was translated by somebody out there on Team Liquid or Reddit, but the big question mark for him was he outright said, I do not play well with Xpecial's playstyle. I don't like playing with him. If that is still a big question, if Piglet and Xpecial don't mesh, like, who is going to be the person to perform on Curse? I mean, could it be Quas? The top lane carry picks are in the meta now. He could play APs. He did it with Lulu a lot in the last split. He could play Rumble. He could play Lissandra. Gnar can turn an entire team around himself. But
we have seen Quas carry. I mean, even before carry tops were in, he was carrying.
Mm-hmm.
So it's possible. But I do agree that would remove a major threat from that team. Like, theoretically, their biggest threat.
I'm really interested. Like, I think all focus in due to the fact that the carry potential and the question marks that Piglet have brought up himself in his vlog, the bottom lane is the big focus here. But with that being said, I think it really relieves a lot of pressure that were on Quas and was on Dominate last split. Because, I know personally us on the podcast here, we give a lot of love to Dominate, but not everybody out there thought he was the best jungler in the NA, like one of the better junglers in NA last split.
Yeah, I think they'll do pretty well. As Greg made a bunch of good points that I mostly agree on. And also, top 4 this split would be more impressive than last split because now there's 10 teams. That's kind of better.
Technically, 5th place would be the new 4th place, then.
Yeah, I mean, well, if Liquid ends up at 5th place, then if they move into 4th place, we'll make the jokes. If they end up at 5th place, we'll make the jokes.
Well, here's the best part. We can make the jokes if Liquid hits 4th or if Team
Gravity.
Gravity hits it. Yeah. So we've got double the odds of being able to make 4th place jokes.
All right, so we have 2 teams left in the schedule to go over, so we're already overtime at this point. So let's go.
Skip Winter Fox because I feel like
No.
If anything, we're skipping TSM and letting Mott do a vlog about it. Vlog. No, let's let him do a drunk vlog about it because I know he's hammered after the Patriots just hammered the Colts.
Let's move on to the most proper team in the NALCS this split, House Winter Fox, as they henceforth shall be known as. They have Avalon in the top lane, Helios in the jungle, Pobelter in the mid lane, Altec, and they are going to have a different support starting for them, but unfortunately he will not be there for the first couple of weeks. Instead, they are bringing up Glebe back into the NALCS. So everybody's going to give you shit for this. Even Mott has a point saying another opportunity for Glebe to be disappointing. Glebe and Altec were the best bottom lane in the North American Challenger Series before TSM took him out of his comfort zone. Glebe and Altec had better synergy than Altec and Crepo. Crepo even said for a fact Altec never wanted to duo queue with him, but Altec duo queues with Glebe. So I think this bottom lane that was good at the end of the last split when they had Crepo is now going to be even better because Altec's actually going to do something.
But it's still Glebe. He's He's the Jesus of supports, Tom.
He's not the Genesis. If anything, he's the boy of supports because he either makes a big play or flashes in and dies.
I don't recall him making big plays, so I'll take your word for it.
I know Glebe and Altec are going to get a lot of flack for this. But all right, so Greg, why don't we start with you? What is the big Debbie Downer for you about House Winterfox? Not team, House Winterfox.
Poe Belter still being on the team, probably.
Really?
Yeah.
Elaborate.
I mean, Glebe is awful, but Poe Belter, back when EG was somewhat rallying, they were starting to look pretty good. Altec and Carepo were sort of coming into their own. Helios was, an improvement for them. Poe Belter is like an anchor weighing down the team. He is consistent, but he's consistent at a challenger level, not an LCS level. He's not like completely ineffective like Jez's was in the European LCS. He has been better in challenger, but Poe Belter just he never makes a big play. He might as well not even be there.
I don't know if you've been watching the same Poe Belter I've been watching, but Poe Belter plays playmaking champions. He plays Zed.
He doesn't make plays with them.
He plays Zed. He plays Ari. I mean, like, I am so hyped for Poe Belter to be in his comfort zone. Not only is he a lot of weight is on his shoulder, but I think it's his comfort zone this split. I think Poe Belter in the mid lane is going to be one of the big things that Winter Fox has built their entire house around. Not game, not team, House Winter Fox. Like, I cannot wait. I cannot wait for Lord Poe Belter, Master of Shadows, Slayer of the Bjergsen, Captain and Helm of House Winter Fox to make a name for himself this split. The big question for me on Winter Fox is Avalon. So Avalon is Helios' little brother. He's a top laner in Korea that has never played on an OGN team. He's only played on what I guess you could equate to Korean challenger teams. So everybody on this team is relatively young. Avalon is 18. Everybody between Glebe, Helios, and Altec can't be older than 20. Helios himself, I think, is the oldest one. He's like 23 or something. So you have a veteran leader. You have a team that almost everybody is fluent in either Korean or English, so you can easily go between languages. And you have a Korean support player coming in from another team once Glebe, once he actually gets his visa stuff sorted out. So Glebe won't be there for, I believe, more than 3 weeks at this, 2-3 weeks at this point or something like that. So the team is going to look a little bit different when Glebe leaves, but I don't know. Like, I'm just really hyped up for this team because I think that this is like the biggest thing with EG players last split was they didn't seem to mesh well together. And part of it was because the younger players liked playing more with people they were friendly with than playing with people that wanted to compete, but they were still really, really good at competing. So now they have like that same synergy. Everybody's relatively the same age. They have their team in-house dad with Helios. I think Winter Fox, top 5.
I like him.
Top
Top 5.
I'm my least favorite thing about Winter Fox is how much that there's going to be I don't want to say a circle jerk, but you mentioning all of those names while Mott plays Poppy Watch, just back and forth for the entire season. Now, they're a wild card. Winter Fox is a gigantic wild card this split. Do we know where Imagine came from too? Like, I don't see any record for Avalon or Imagine playing in pretty much anything professionally.
I think the only wild card is whether they come in 10th or 9th.
You see,
oh jeez, we're so divided on this one.
I
We'll
think
see who's right, but let's look at past track records.
Yeah, well, Imagine has also come from a Korean Challengers level team. I don't know if he's ever played with Avalon. Didn't even qualify for the NLB bracket stage, which which is where the OGN teams start filtering down in. Because old NLB structure was we went from Gold League to Platinum League. Platinum League is where the people dropped out of the OGN group stage into, and then you had Diamond League, which basically was like one or two of those challenger teams competing with all the other people that dropped out, and then you went into the top 8 bracket stage. Yeah. Well, quarterfinals got seeded into bracket stage. I might be jumping ahead. Platinum League may have been like the top challenger, and then the Diamond League is where they filtered in the OGM players. But I don't know. I think top 5. Greg thinks number 10. Mitch, you're the voice of reason.
Number 10. I think they will be one of the relegation teams for sure.
Okay, so 8th or 9th, 8th or 10th is what you're saying.
Yeah.
I
mean, a lot of their placement, I think, is going to depend on how Team 8 does and whether Dig can rally from their IEM performance.
think that
Probably can't.
this. I think there's so much. I think this is going to be such a new split. Oh, obviously, it's such a new split, huh? I think it's going to be an incredibly different split now that we're in a completely new season. We haven't seen a lot of these teams play professionally in the new split or in the new season. We have a lot of new players, 2 new teams, new format, and when you throw in a wildcard team like Winter Fox that's full of a lot of unknowns, I'm excited for them. I don't know that they'll necessarily finish as high as Tom thinks or as low as Greg thinks, but I think that they're going to be. I think that they could finish anywhere, and that's what's really exciting to me.
Whoa. How are Winter Fox unknowns? The only unknown player is Apple.
Well, you have 2.
Alltech we've seen. Pobelter we've seen.
Gleb's there for a week.
We've seen
He's
bunch.
for a week, though. He's not the starting player. Like, I mean, we have
3 weeks, isn't he?
Something like that. It's until the visa issues get sorted
Okay,
out,
but
which
still-
could take
but
any
still,
number
he's
of weeks.
but not a permanent player. I don't.
So they're going to have a really shitty support for almost a month, and then mid-season they're going to swap to a Korean support.
And they have
That's
3
not very
Korean
good,
players.
apparently.
Korean players, I think they'll be okay. And
Top
doesn't
5.
Pobelter speaks Korean, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So that's the best team for Koreans to jump onto. I think they'll be fine. I actually now that I think about that with the more Korean synergy, they're my giants.
Oh God!
They're who I'm gonna pull.
They
for
didn't
top.
come through the Challenger circuit. You can't be giants if you don't go to the Challenger circuit.
But I mean the synergy, the synergistic, which is totally a word.
I thought that was Team 8.
Yeah, well, no, it's both of them now. They're both great. I think they're both top 5. So,
All right. Regardless, we are a house divided when it comes to House Winter Fox, and only the beginning week of the LCS split will tell the tale. But since we are way over time on the podcast already, I hate to breeze through this team because they're obviously one of the fan favorites. But let's talk TSM very, very briefly. Much like Cloud9, not a lot of changes. They lost Amazing in the jungle. They have Santorin, so now it's Dyrus, Santorin, Bjergsen, Wild Turtle, Lustboy. Are we expecting them to be like Cloud9 and have a repeat performance, or are we expecting something better or worse for TSM?
0-2 week 1. Done.
I feel slightly worse.
Elaborate.
I don't think they win the split.
I
don't
don't feel slightly worse than Bench. I feel like they will do slightly worse than they did before.
I could get behind them maybe slipping down in the standings a little bit. So at the end of the year, they took first place in the playoffs. They took not even second place during the regular season. So I could potentially see them being, somewhere along like the top 3 or 4 teams. But I don't necessarily think their performance is going to slip all too bad. Actually, the way that history looks at it, they're normally better in the spring split, but historically are terrible with change. So, for example, against Unicorns of Love, their game plan got disrupted. They might not have been as adjusted to the new jungle and some of the changes. They crumbled against them. Summer Season 3, after winning the spring split convincingly, except for those couple matches against GGU in the finals, they went 14-14 in the summer. After placing first place, they went all the way through the playoffs and lost to Cloud9. Season 3 spring, they did fairly decent. They went all the way to the finals and lost to Cloud9. Summer of Season 4, they went 16-12 with Lustboy and Glebe swaps and blah, 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 blah. Went all the way through and actually beat Cloud9 in the finals. But historically, they are a spring split team. When everybody is new and there's fresh blood and they've had some chance in the offseason to figure things out, TSM seems to do their best. So, while I think it's actually pretty interesting that we're all kind of in agreement that they might not do as well as they did last split. When historically, this is their good split, and last split was their bad split.
I mean, I don't like TSM, probably just because Mott praises them so much. I think that they'll probably finish in the top 4. Though I think they'll slip a little bit, but that's not saying that much because they did finish 3rd in last summer before having a nice run in the playoffs. I think they could do well. I don't know how Santorin's going to do with them. I mean, considering we did get to see them in Unicorns of Love, but I don't know. Top 4, but if they slipped a little bit more, wouldn't be too surprised.
All right, really quick because we need to start wrapping things up, and we still have a quick week 1 schedule to get over. Last bullet on TSM: Santorin versus Amazing. Upgrade or downgrade? Greg.
sideways. I don't know. I feel like it's not. I feel like Amazing got a really bad rap, and I don't know much about Santorin enough to say that he'd really be better for him. Especially because integrating Korean players into their team has not really gone too well.
All right, Mitch, upgrade or downgrade?
Danish, mid lane, jungle, connection, obviously an upgrade.
All right, well, we're going to have to see. We are going to be starting week one of the, or we're not technically going to be starting it. Riot's going to be starting.
No, we're starting
week
it.
one.
We're not the hosts.
Of week one of the NA LCS is going to be starting on Saturday, and it is going to kick off with a doozy. We have TS against Cloud9, followed by Coast against Dignitas, Winter Fox versus Gravity, TIP, Impact versus Liquid, or Impulse. Impact is the top laner. And we have CLG against Team 8. So last week, Machinorum had me take day 1 and Sifa take day 2. So I'm going to copy his style, and then a speed quick thing. If you run out of time, you're going to hear the GG button. You have to pick a team after all. So we only have a couple of seconds to do this.
There we go.
So I'm going to start day 1. Let's go with Greg. TSM versus Cloud9. Who wins and why?
Cloud9, because Cloud9, and TSM, because TSM.
All right.
This is the rematch we've seen a zillion times, and more often than not, it's Cloud9. It's definitely going to be Cloud9.
All right. Coast versus Dignitas.
Coast, because Dig's probably going to look like shit for a few weeks minimum.
House Winter Fox versus Team Space Dicks Gravity.
Space Dicks?
All right. Just the Tip or Team Liquid?
Oh, I got to go with Liquid, of course. I mean, there's really no other way.
All right, and CLG versus Team 8.
This is going to be a tough one. This is a really hard one to call because obviously Team 8 is a big unknown right now. CLG is not as big of an unknown. I think even though they've got Zion Spartan off, I think X-Smithy, Afro Milk and Double Scoop will probably carry it, so I'm going to go with CLG.
All right, Mitch, you're on day 2. You get to kick things off with a doozy. Dignitas versus Team Impact.
Why do you call that a doozy?
Because
that just doesn't seem like a game I want to watch. But Impulse, I'd have to go with.
Doozy another word for aneurysm?
Yeah, that's probably more right. Or seizure. Impulse.
All right, Team Coast versus House Winter Fox.
Definitely House Winter Fox. I'm on board. I'm on the hype train. Coast, I think is. We both think Coast is going to be pretty garbage.
Team Liquid versus Counter Logic Gaming.
Oh, I hate to pick against CLG, but I'm going to go with Liquid. I think they're more stable.
I like this. Liquid being more solid than CLG when they're clearly not a solid. Cloud9 against Team Gravity.
Cloud9, because Cloud9 things.
All right, and Team 8 versus TSM. New blood versus old blood.
This is the game I'm most excited about because I'm going with Team 8.
Woo!
Yeah,
little elaboration.
You heard me talk like all the praises of Team 8 already. I think you could just rewind back to the 25-minute mark, and you'll probably hear everything I want to talk about with as far as Team 8. I just think they're really solid. I want Trolls to just dumpster Dyrus. I would love to see that. I don't know if it'll happen, but it would be pretty incredible.
If you think Liquid is going to be more solid than CLG, do you expect them to put the competition on ice?
I expect it to be Counter Logic regardless of no matter what happens there. But guys, this has been the Trinity Force LCS Rundown, episode 45. We don't know how to keep things